The boy in the crawl space. They say the dead don't talk, but sometimes they scratch. Ryan Mallory came back to Derry, Maine on a cold Tuesday morning in November. His father was dead, heart attack they said, and the old house on Willow Creek Road was now his. He hadn't been back in almost 20 years, not since Mom died. The place looked smaller than he remembered, like time had shrunk it. The paint on the porch was peeling. The swing where he used to sit and read Hardy Boys books was gone. Only the rusted chains remained, swaying in the breeze like lonely arms. Inside, it smelled like dust and old paper. His dad had been a hoarder in his later years. Newspapers stacked to the ceiling, unopened mail, and half-finished crossword puzzles. The house was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that felt heavy, like something was holding its breath. The crawl space was in the hallway closet. Ryan didn't want to go in there. Not really. He remembered being scared of it as a kid, always convinced something lived under the floorboards. But now he was a grown man, 36, tired, a little bitter. What was he going to do? Be afraid of the dark again? Still, when he knelt and opened the small wooden hatch, his stomach turned. The air that rushed out was cold, damp, stale. It smelled like old things, earth, wood rot, and something else, something sour. He aimed his flashlight inside. The beam flickered, then held. Dust floated like tiny ghosts in the light. And then he saw it, a pile of crumpled papers tucked behind an old heater pipe. He reached in. There were about 20 of them. Drawings, childlike. Done in bright crayon, reds, blues, and yellows. Scribbles of stick figures, smiling houses, sunshines. But the more he looked, the more wrong they seemed. On one page, a stick figure boy stood next to a taller man with no face. In another, the boy was in a box underground, frowning. Each one was signed at the bottom. By Tommy. Ryan stared at the name. What the hell? He never had a brother. Never knew any kids named Tommy. His mom couldn't have had another child, could she? Still, he took the drawings and laid them on the kitchen table. That night, he barely slept. Every creak of the house made him sit up. At 2:14 a.m., he heard it. Scratch, scratch, scratch. From beneath the floor, slow, steady, deliberate, he told himself it was rats, maybe a raccoon. Old houses were full of that kind of thing, but the next night it came again. Same time, 2:14 a.m., scratch, scratch, scratch. Only this time there was a whisper, a voice, high and soft. Ryan, I'm still here. He tore up half the floorboards the next morning. There was nothing underneath, just dirt and the crawl space. No sign of rats, no sign of anything. He called a plumber, then an exterminator. Both said the same thing. Place was dry. Nothing down there but spiders. But Ryan knew better. The third night, he didn't sleep at all. He sat at the top of the stairs with a baseball bat, flashlight in one hand. When the scratching came again, he was ready. This time, it was louder. Scratch! Then, let me out! Ryan's hands shook. The voice was right below him now, beneath the wooden hallway. He dropped to his knees and put his ear to the floor. It whispered again, clearer this time. It's me, Tommy. Don't you remember? That was when he started digging. He pried the floor open, pulled up boards until he reached the crawlspace entrance again. This time, he crawled in, deeper than before. His flashlight picked up something new, a wooden box, like a toy chest. He opened it slowly. Inside was a small dust-covered t-shirt, child-sized, folded neatly, and beneath it, a skull, tiny, fragile. Around the skull were more crayon drawings. Only these were different. They showed Ryan, older, angry, standing over a small boy holding a toy truck. In one drawing, the boy was crying. In the next, he wasn't moving. The final picture was just red. A lot of red. In the corner, the signature again. By Tommy. Ryan dropped the drawing. His heart thundered in his chest. He didn't remember this. He couldn't have done this, right? And yet, as he backed out of the crawlspace, the air grew thick. The cold deepened, and something grabbed his ankle. He screamed, kicking wildly. Whatever it was small, but strong. He yanked himself out, slamming the hatch shut, gasping for air. And then, silence. Ryan left the next morning. He didn't tell the cops, didn't call anyone, just packed a bag and drove, left the house to rot. But sometimes, in the middle of the night, he still hears the scratching, even in hotels, even across the country. Let me out. And sometimes, when he dreams, he sees a little boy with crayon-stained fingers and a smile too wide for his face. The end. Static on Channel 13. It started with a flicker, just a quick flash on the screen. Nothing major, not at first. Wes Parker had lived in the quiet town of Larchwood, Maine all his life. Small town, everyone knew everyone. There was a post office, a greasy spoon diner, and a hardware store that still sold nails by the pound in a paper bag. The kind of place where things didn't change much. That was the first problem. Because Channel 13 had never existed before. Wes was flipping through the old TV in his garage, the kind with knobs, rabbit ears, and no remote. It was something he kept around out of nostalgia, a little project to work on when he needed time away from his real job, which was managing the gas station down on Route 17. That evening, rain poured like hell. Thunder rolled in long, angry groans, the kind of night that made you want to drink something warm and ignore the world. Wes turned the dial. Channels 2 through 12 were static as usual, but then Channel 13 blinked to life, black and white, grainy, but the image was clear enough. A family sat at a dinner table, smiling, motionless at first, like a freeze frame. Then the father, a square-jawed man with slicked-back hair, turned toward the screen. His eyes were wide. His smile didn't move. He stared directly at the camera. At West, then the mother turned. Then the little boy. They all smiled, eyes locked on the screen. Just watching. Wes laughed nervously and changed the channel. Static, back to 13. Still smiling. He clicked off the TV and went inside, shaking his head. Figured it was some kind of art project. Maybe someone was hijacking an old signal tower. But it didn't stop there. By the weekend, others in town started talking. "Hey, you ever see Channel 13? A teen asked at the gas station, eyes a little too wide, lips curled in a strange grin. Wes just shrugged. "Yeah, weird show." "They're not shows," the boy whispered. "They're real. They're watching us." The mayor's wife stopped showing up to church. They said she sat in front of the TV all day, eyes glassy, smiling like someone had wired her face in place. Kids at the high school were drawing creepy sketches, men in suits with black, staring eyes. Every single drawing was titled the same way. "They see us." Wes's neighbor, Rick, knocked on his door one morning. "I think they're in my house," he whispered, "from the TV, from 13. "Rick, are you high?" Rick just grinned. Then he walked back home, and later that night, they found him dead. Face frozen in that same weird smile, eyes burned black, TV still on, Channel 13. Wes tried unplugging his set. Didn't matter. It came back on. Click. Channel 13. This time there was a new show. A talk show, maybe. A woman in a 1950s dress sat at a desk. Her lipstick was too red, her smile too wide. "Hi, Wes," she said cheerfully, tilting her head. He dropped the remote. "We're so happy you've been watching. We're always happy when someone new joins the family." Wes turned and ran out of the garage, heart pounding in his chest like a jackhammer. But even from outside, through the cracked window, he could still hear her voice. "Don't worry. We'll keep watching you." People in Larchwood stopped talking after that. They stopped blinking, too. You'd walk past someone on the street and their eyes would follow you, just a little too long. Their smiles would linger. At night, every house flickered with pale blue light. Channel 13, always on. No one seemed scared anymore, just happy, too happy. Wes tried to leave. He packed a bag and drove toward the city. He never made it. The roads looped back. Every sign said Larchwood 2 miles. He got out of the car. Trees whispered around him. He turned on the radio, static, then a voice. "Hi, Wes." That night, he went home, turned on the TV, Channel 13. The family was still at the table, still smiling. This time there was an extra chair. Wes sat down and smiled back. Somewhere in that dusty town, the televisions keep glowing. The signal never fades. The watchers are always waiting, and if you ever pass through Larchwood, don't turn on Channel 13, because once you see them, they see you too. The end.
The Shed That Whispers. If you ask Carter Miles why he bought the old Benson place, he'll tell you it was the price. A rundown farmhouse on the edge of nowhere, dirt cheap, 2 acres of land, and just enough structure left to flip and sell for triple. But that's not the full truth. What he won't tell you, at least not right away, is that something about the property called to him. A pull, a quiet hum in the chest he couldn't explain. He would also never mention the shed. The house was exactly what he expected. Moldy floors, peeling wallpaper, mice in the attic. Nothing a seasoned carpenter like Carter couldn't handle. He had a tool belt, a work truck, and years of experience turning rotted wood into polished hardwood. This was just another project, or so he thought. It was his 3rd day on the property when he noticed the shed. It sat behind the house, almost hidden by tall weeds and thick brambles. The wood was gray and warped, the roof half collapsed, the whole thing leaning like it wanted to disappear into the ground. But what struck Carter was how it was sealed. Not locked, sealed. Thick, rusted chains were wrapped around the doors, and long, ancient nails had been driven through the frame in odd, almost ritualistic patterns. Someone had gone to great lengths to keep it closed. That night, he found a journal in a drawer in the upstairs bedroom. It was small, leather-bound, and falling apart. The first few pages were normal lists of home repairs, receipts, grocery notes. Then came the ramblings. Something in the walls. Something old. Something that knows when I'm awake. Don't open the shed, please. It remembers the sound of your voice. The trees whisper at night. They say my name. They want me to come back inside. Carter stared at the pages for a long time. Half of it looked like the mad scribblings of a man who'd lost his grip. Still, he kept the journal on his nightstand. He told himself it was just a story, just words. The next day, he broke open the shed. The chains snapped easier than they should have, like they wanted to fall away. The nails came loose without a fight. The wood groaned as the doors creaked open, revealing only darkness. The air that rushed out was cold, unnaturally cold, like winter air in the middle of July. Smelled like wet soil, old metal, and something sour. He stepped inside. The floor was covered in dirt. The walls were bare. No tools, no shelves. Just a small pile of something in the corner, bones. Small, maybe from animals, maybe not. And carved deep into the back wall, in a shaky, jagged hand, were the words, "IT lives." Carter left the shed without saying a word. That night he couldn't sleep. The house was quiet, but the woods outside were not. The wind moved through the trees like it had a voice. And around midnight, he heard something that stopped his breath. A voice, calling his name. Carter. It was soft, gentle, coming from the trees behind the house. He got up, walked to the window, looked out. The shed was still there, and something was standing just outside its door. He closed the blinds, told himself it was a dream, or exhaustion, or maybe something stronger than the beer he'd had with dinner. But the voice came again. Carter, come back inside. For the next few days, the whispering didn't stop. Always after dark. Always from the trees. He started leaving lights on. Slept with a hammer beside the bed. But it didn't matter. The voices came anyway. Some nights they cried. Other nights they laughed. Once he swore they sang. And always they said his name. He tried to leave once. Packed his tools, started the truck. Got all the way to the edge of the dirt road. But the engine died. The forest pressed in around him like it was breathing. Watching, he walked back to the house. The shed door was open. Now Carter doesn't try to leave. He keeps the shed closed again. Boards it up, nails it shut every night. But every morning the boards are pulled off. The door hangs open, and the air is always cold. He doesn't sleep much. He just listens. Listens to the whispering trees, calling his name, begging him to come back inside. The end. The 13th Stair. Elaine had never believed in ghosts. Not in the way that people believed in ghosts. She believed in things like poor wiring, faulty plumbing, and the strange noises an old house made when it settled. But all that changed after the surgery. It wasn't supposed to be a big deal. A routine procedure, nothing life-threatening. Just a minor knee surgery. But when the anesthesia wore off, Elaine's world tilted. There was pain, and then there was the recovery. Days and weeks blurred together in the haze of prescription painkillers. And the nights, well, the nights were always the hardest. That's when it started. The first time Elaine saw her, she thought it was a trick of the light. A shadow. A hallucination brought on by too much pain and not enough sleep. It was 2:17 a.m., just as the clock on the wall ticked over. She woke up in her bed, a familiar ache in her leg from the surgery, but something was off. The room was too quiet, and there, just at the top of the stairs, sitting on the 13th step, was a little girl. Elaine blinked, rubbed her eyes. The girl was still there, small, thin, with pale skin and dark hair that hung straight down, covering her face. She wore an old-fashioned dress, one that seemed out of place in the modern world. It was almost like something from another time. The girl didn't move. She didn't speak. Elaine swallowed hard, her heart hammering in her chest. She didn't know why, but something about the stillness of the figure unsettled her. She pulled the blankets tighter around her and tried to ignore it. Just a trick of her mind, she told herself. But when she closed her eyes and listened to the silence, she could still feel the girl's presence. And the longer she looked, the more she realized she couldn't look away. The next night it happened again. At 2:17 a.m., exactly. The same little girl, sitting on the 13th step, staring up at her bedroom door. Elaine's leg was better now. The recovery was moving along. But her mind had started to fray a little. She'd been seeing things, hearing things. The doctor had warned her it could happen, that the painkillers might mess with her head. But this wasn't something that could be explained by drugs or exhaustion. The girl was closer that night, 2 steps higher, still silent, still watching. Elaine's heart skipped a beat. She couldn't explain why, but the girl seemed familiar. The feeling wasn't one of fear, but something else. Something buried deep, like a memory just beyond reach. By the 4th night, the girl was on the 11th step. And this time, Elaine didn't turn away. She stayed awake, staring at the figure in the dark, trying to place her. There was something so real about the girl. She wasn't a figment of Elaine's imagination. She wasn't a dream. She was there, in the quiet of the house, in the stillness of the night. Elaine's breath caught in her throat when the girl shifted. Slowly, carefully, she moved up one more step, until she was on the 10th. And then it hit her. The memory. She saw a face. A woman's face, blurred by time and dust. But the eyes, Elaine couldn't forget the eyes. Cold, empty, and the sound of footsteps echoing down the stairs. A scream, a thud. Elaine's heart pounded in her chest. What had happened? What had she done? The next night, the girl was on the 8th step. And Elaine remembered more. She was a little girl, no older than the child on the stairs. She was playing in the house, running up and down the staircase. The sound of laughter echoed through the halls. And then, just as she reached the top, Elaine felt the shudder in her chest. Did I do it? She couldn't breathe. Her hand went to her mouth. Did I push her? By the 6th night, the girl was standing at the foot of the stairs. Elaine's body trembled, her legs spasming in pain, but it was nothing compared to the feeling in her chest. The suffocating weight of a memory that had been buried for 20 years. The girl looked at her, her face still hidden by dark hair. But now Elaine could hear the faintest whisper. A voice, soft and distant, almost drowned out by the sound of her own heartbeat. "Why did you do it, Mommy?" Elaine's breath hitched. She squeezed her eyes shut, her hands shaking. "No, no, no, no." The whisper came again, louder this time. "Why did you push me?" She bolted from the bed, hobbled across the room on unsteady legs, and stumbled toward the stairs. The girl was gone. The house was still, too still. But the feeling didn't go away. It never did. Elaine knew. The memories were all coming back now. The girl wasn't a ghost. She wasn't a trick of the mind. She was something Elaine had buried. Something she couldn't escape. She had done it. She had pushed the little girl down the stairs 20 years ago. Her daughter, the one who had fallen, hit her head, and died that night. And now the girl was coming back for her. The next morning, Elaine moved out. She didn't tell anyone why. Didn't tell anyone what she remembered. But she left. And the house on the hill? It was empty, except for the stairs, the 13th step, and the silence. The end. The Dandelion Man. The kids in Brookfield didn't talk about the Dandelion Man during the day. They only whispered about him at night, when the grown-ups were asleep, and the streets grew quiet, and the stars blinked overhead like the watchful eyes of something else. The Dandelion Man was a figure of myth to the parents. A story told to keep the little ones inside after dark, when the air got cool and the shadows stretched long. But the kids, they knew better. They knew something the adults didn't. He came at night. He came for the ones who didn't listen. He was the Dandelion Man, and he left flowers. It started with Max Collins, a quiet boy who lived on Pine Street. Max was 12, tall for his age, with big, round glasses that made him look more like a little professor than a child. He wasn't the kind to get into trouble. He was the kind of kid who read books in the library, played video games, and sometimes, on warm evenings, ran through the sprinklers in his backyard. One night, as the summer sun dipped below the horizon, Max noticed something strange. There were dandelions. Yellow, bright dandelions, scattered across the windowsill of his room. No one had brought them there. His mom had been cleaning the house all day, and his dad was away on business. Max had closed the window before he went to bed, and yet here they were, delicate and bright, sitting on the ledge like they belonged there. At first, he thought it was a prank. Maybe one of his friends had snuck in through the window, or maybe it was his sister who was always up to some mischief. But then he saw the note. It was small, handwritten, with letters that were oddly crooked, like they had been scrawled in a hurry. "For Max, the Dandelion Man is coming. He waits in the yard. Don't leave." Max stared at the note for a long time. He didn't believe in stories like that. The Dandelion Man was just a tale parents used to scare their kids. Everyone knew that, but something in his chest felt tight, like he was being watched. He didn't tell anyone. Not his parents, not his sister, not even his best friend down the street. He just sat there, staring at the flowers, the words echoing in his mind. The next day, Max was gone. No one noticed at first. His mom thought he was still in bed when she went in to check on him. When she went to his room later, the bed was empty, and the window was wide open. The dandelions were gone. The note was gone. But the smell of flowers lingered, faint in the air. At first, they thought he'd run away, that maybe he'd snuck out the night before and gone to play with friends. But when they checked the usual places, his best friend's house, the park, the street corners, there was no sign of him. It was like he'd vanished into thin air. The police were called. They searched the neighborhood, even the nearby woods. But they found nothing.
No clues. No Max.
After a week, they stopped looking. And then, another child disappeared. This time, it was Olivia Harris, a quiet girl who lived on Elm Street. Olivia was 8, the youngest of 3 siblings, and she always loved to run barefoot through the grass, her hair flying behind her like a ribbon. One evening, she came running inside, eyes wide with excitement. "Mom, I found something. There's flowers in my shoes." Her mother, busy with the laundry, barely looked up. She smiled and said, "That's nice, sweetie. Just leave them outside. Okay?" But Olivia didn't listen. She held up a small bouquet of bright yellow dandelions, just like Max had seen. There was no one outside. No one had come to bring them. That night, Olivia vanished. And this time, the whispers started again. The parents, of course, dismissed it. It was just folklore. Old stories to keep the kids from wandering too far, too late. But when little Sam Walker, a 6-year-old with an adventurous streak, disappeared the next week, even the most skeptical parents started to feel a chill. Something wasn't right. That's when Sarah Marshall, a mother who lived in the same neighborhood, started having dreams. At first, they were simple dreams. A man, tall and thin, standing in her backyard. His face was always hidden by a thick, wild mass of weeds. His body wrapped in vines and dandelion stems. His smile was wide, too wide, and it stretched unnaturally across his face. The man never spoke. He just stood there, watching. One night, in the dream, she saw him walk to the back door of her house. He didn't knock. He didn't need to. The door creaked open by itself, and Sarah felt her heart freeze in her chest. The Dandelion Man stepped inside, the scent of dandelions filling the air. And then, she heard a voice in her ear, soft and cold. "He's coming for your children, Sarah, just like he came for the others." She woke up gasping, drenched in sweat. The dandelion smell lingered in her nostrils, and when she turned to look out the window, she could have sworn she saw something standing in the shadows of her backyard. Sarah didn't tell anyone about the dreams at first, but as the nights wore on, the dreams grew worse. The man got closer. He whispered louder. And one night, after another child disappeared, Sarah decided to act. She went to the backyard with a flashlight, her heart pounding, and there, just behind the fence, standing under the old oak tree, was the Dandelion Man. He was tall, impossibly tall, made of vines, dandelions, and twisted roots. His eyes were dark, like pits, and he was smiling. The smell of flowers filled the air. The next day, Sarah disappeared. She was gone without a trace. But the children were still there, watching the yard, whispering to each other. And in the morning, there were always dandelions. On the windowsills, in the shoes, at the foot of the bed. And every night, the Dandelion Man waited. The end. Cold calls from the grave. The first voicemail came exactly 6 months after she died. James was sitting in the kitchen, drinking a cup of bitter black coffee, staring out the window like he did most mornings. It was raining. A slow, cold drizzle that soaked the world and made everything look gray. That was how life had been since Sarah passed. Just gray. The phone buzzed on the table. One new voicemail. Unknown number. He didn't think much of it. Spam, probably. Telemarketer or a wrong number. But then he played it. Static. Just white noise. Hissing and whispering, like wind through dead leaves. It wasn't long, maybe 15 seconds, but it sent a chill up his spine. Something about the sound felt wrong, like it wasn't random, like it was trying to shape itself into something he almost recognized. Then it ended. That night, James dreamed of her. Not the good kind of dream. Not the ones where she was laughing, holding his hand, or walking barefoot across the beach like she used to. No. This time, she was cold.
Soaking wet.
Her skin pale and her lips blue. She was standing at the foot of their old bed, her eyes wide, pleading. "James," she whispered, "you have to listen. I can't stay here."
I'm trapped.
When he woke up, his pillow was damp with sweat. The phone buzzed again. One new voicemail. He hit play with a trembling finger. This time, it wasn't static. This time, it was crying. Soft at first, then louder, then sharp, panic sobs. A woman's voice, Sarah's voice. And even though it was distorted, broken like a radio broadcast from underground, he knew it was her. "James," she said, between sobs. "It's dark. I don't know where I am. It's cold." Then the message cut off. He didn't sleep for 2 nights after that. The next message came at 3:13 a.m. Voicemail. Unknown number. James stared at the screen for a long time before playing it. This time it was worse. The voice wasn't crying anymore. It was begging. James, it's me. I know this doesn't make sense, but please, you have to answer.
I'm stuck.
Between here and something else. There are things here. Things with no faces. And one of them, God, James, one of them is wearing my voice. There was a sound in the background then. Something scraping, like claws on stone. And something else. A deep, rumbling growl that made James's skin crawl. I don't know how much longer I can hold on, she whispered. Please, help me. The call ended, and the silence that followed was worse than the message itself. James tried to destroy the phone. He threw it against the wall, cracked, but didn't break. He smashed it with a hammer. The screen shattered, but it still turned on. He even tried burying it in the backyard. The next morning, it was on the kitchen table. Dry, clean, undamaged, waiting. By the seventh voicemail, the voice didn't even sound like Sarah anymore. It was close but wrong. Like something else was speaking through her. Like a puppet trying to pretend it was real. James, answer the call. The voice was flat now. Too smooth. Too perfect.
No emotion.
Just words. Come to me. Follow my voice into the dark. It's the only way. James stared at the phone for a long time. Then he said something he hadn't said out loud in months.
No.
He unplugged the charger, turned the phone off, locked it in a drawer and left the house. Drove until he ran out of gas. Slept in the car. Anything to get away from the sound. But the dreams followed him. He dreamed of Sarah standing in the fog, her arms outstretched, and something behind her, tall, thin, with too many fingers and a face that shimmered like smoke. It wore Sarah's smile like a mask, and when it opened its mouth, her voice came out. You promised forever. When he finally came home, the phone was waiting on his bed, charged, screen glowing. One missed call, one new voicemail. This time, James didn't listen. This time, he answered. He put the phone to his ear. Sarah? He whispered. There was a long silence. Then a voice, not Sarah's, not really, spoke back. You're ready. The room went dark. The phone slipped from his hand. They found his body a week later, sitting in the corner of his living room, phone still clutched in one hand. The look on his face wasn't peaceful. His eyes were open, his mouth stretched wide like he'd been screaming. But there was no sign of struggle, just a single voicemail still unplayed, and a faint smell of something wet and rotting in the air. The end.
Underneath Aunt Lila's house. Aunt Lila's house was the kind of place that felt like it had too many corners, too many rooms, too many whispers in the walls. It sat on a sloped hill just outside of Milford, tall and crooked like a spine with arthritis. The windows were dusty, the wood was chipped, and the garden hadn't seen love in decades. But it still stood proud, wrapped in vines and mystery. When their parents dropped them off for the summer, Maya and Trevor thought it was going to be boring. Lila was weird, sure. Always humming songs that didn't seem to have melodies, always talking to her dozen cats like they were people. But she was kind, in that strange, floaty kind of way. She smelled like peppermint and mothballs, and she made tea that tasted like flowers. You two stay out of the parlor, she warned them on the first day. Old boards in there bad for your feet. So, of course, by the third day, they were exploring the parlor. It was dusty and dim, the heavy curtains drawn shut. A grand piano sat in the corner, untouched, every key covered in a thin film of time. But it was the rug that caught their attention, thick and dark red, like dried blood. It didn't fit the room. It was newer than the rest of the house. Trevor stepped on it, then frowned. Did you hear that? Hear what? He stomped again. Thump. Something hollow. They pulled back the rug, coughing as the dust flew up in clouds. And there it was. A trap door, metal handle, old hinges, scratched like something had once tried to claw its way out. Maya hesitated. Maybe we shouldn't. But Trevor had already opened it. The smell hit them first, cold and musty, like Earth that had never seen sun. They found a flashlight and climbed down the old wooden ladder into the dark. The ladder went down farther than it should have, and when they finally touched solid ground, they didn't find dirt or stone. They found mirrors. The cavern underneath Aunt Lila's house was the size of a small church. The walls weren't natural. They were smooth, as if carved by careful hands long ago. But what really made their stomachs twist were the mirrors. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, all different shapes and sizes. Some were broken, some were perfect. None of them showed what they should have. Maya stood in front of one and gasped. "I'm smiling," she whispered, "but I'm not smiling." Trevor stared at one beside her. His reflection was waving at him. He wasn't moving. They walked deeper, moving between the mirrors. The reflections changed. In one, they were screaming. In another, they were older. In a third, they were gone completely, but the mirror kept shifting like someone was walking just out of frame. Then they came to a tall, cracked mirror at the far end of the cavern, and something was inside it. It wasn't a reflection. It wasn't them. It looked human, but wrong. Too tall. Skin stretched thin like it had been painted over bones. Its eyes were black pits and its mouth was a wide, wet grin. It wasn't moving, just watching. Maya grabbed Trevor's arm. "Let's go, now!" They turned, and all the mirrors behind them were different. Now they all showed the same thing, the tall thing, behind them. They ran, stumbling up the ladder, gasping for air as they slammed the trapdoor shut and shoved the rug back into place. The house above them felt different now, too quiet. The air was colder. Aunt Lila was waiting for them in the hallway. "You opened it," she said softly, not angry, just tired. "I told you to stay out." "What is that?" Trevor asked, still out of breath. "Under there?" Lila looked at them with sad, glassy eyes. "That's where the mirrors go, the ones that remember. It's been watching me for years. Now it's watching you." She turned and walked away without another word. That night, Maya woke up to a sound. A soft tapping. She sat up in bed. The mirror across the room was fogged over. Something was tapping on the other side. Something tall. Something grinning. And when she reached for Trevor, his bed was empty. A smile too wide. It was raining when Eddie Rawlins rolled into Greywater. He hadn't meant to stop there. He was heading west, anywhere but back home, and the only reason he pulled off the highway was because his old pickup was sputtering like it had finally had enough. The Welcome to Greywater sign leaned sideways, half buried in vines. Population, 821, it said. Someone had scratched out the last number. Eddie squinted through the fog. The town looked like it hadn't been touched in years. Everything was damp, gray, and too still. Even the birds were silent. He found a small motel near the edge of town, the Greywater Rest Stop, neon sign blinking weakly in the rain. The woman at the front desk smiled too much, way too much. "Need a room, hun?" she asked, her teeth perfect and plentiful. Her cheeks stretched unnaturally wide, like a Halloween mask that didn't fit right. Her eyes didn't blink once. "Yeah," Eddie muttered. "Just for the night." He didn't sleep well. At first it was just the rain tapping on the window, then it was footsteps in the hallway, then laughter, high-pitched, too cheerful, and far too close to his door. When he looked out the peephole, no one was there. But in the morning, things felt worse. He went to the diner across the street, Sunnyside Cafe, where everyone inside was smiling. Big, toothy grins stretched across every face. The waitress never blinked, even once, as she poured his coffee. "Passing through?" she asked, her voice chipper but empty, like someone reading lines from a script. "Trying to," Eddie said. "Truck's acting up." She smiled wider. "Well, no one really leaves Greywater, not once they feel at home. He left after one sip of coffee, drove toward the highway. But 10 minutes later, he was back on the same foggy street, right past the same leaning welcome sign, right past the Greywater rest stop, right past the grinning woman at the front desk, waving at him from the lobby. Eddie cursed and tried again. He took every turn he could, north, then east, looping, guessing, even using the stars. But it always came back to Greywater. That night, back in the motel, Eddie started going through the drawers, looking for a map, maybe a clue. That's when he found the tape, a black VHS. No label except for a white sticker, "How to Smile Like You Mean It." He stared at it for a long time. Then, God help him, he watched it. The tape started with a jingle, bright, bouncy music that felt old, like it belonged on some kid's show from the 80s. Then came the man, gray suit, red tie, big teeth. "Smiling is the first step to being truly happy," the man said, grinning ear to ear. "Here in Greywater, we believe everyone deserves a smile that lasts forever." Eddie tried to stop the tape. The remote didn't work. He got up, pressed the power button. Nothing. The screen flickered. The man's eyes widened. His smile grew. "Don't you want to be happy, Eddie?" the voice said. Now it was coming from the walls, not the TV. Eddie backed away, heart pounding. "Let us help you smile. From the inside out." And then he felt it. His cheeks twitched. His lips curled. His face pulled into a smile that hurt. He couldn't stop. When he looked in the mirror, his grin was too wide. His lips were cracking at the edges, blood on his gums, but he couldn't stop smiling. Now he sits in the motel lobby, behind the desk. The woman is gone. Maybe she smiled too hard and broke. Eddie greets the next traveler with a perfect, gleaming smile. "Need a room, friend?" he says. His voice sounds cheerful. His eyes never blink. And behind him, on a dusty shelf, a row of black VHS tapes waits, each one labeled the same way. "How to Smile Like You Mean It." The end. The Bus That Doesn't Stop It started with a story nobody believed. An old woman swore she'd seen the Route 113 bus rolling down Westburn Street at exactly midnight. The problem? That route had been shut down 10 years ago, after the accident. People brushed her off, said she was confused, just a lonely old lady chasing shadows. Then a teenager went missing, last seen waiting at a bus stop at 11:59 p.m., then another, and another. That's when Eric DeWitt, a local freelance journalist, decided to look into it. He didn't believe in ghosts, he believed in facts, and maybe a viral story to save his dying blog. He talked to witnesses, all said the same thing: midnight, a bus that looks old, too old, paint-chipped, headlights too dim, the number 113 glowing faintly on the front, and a driver you couldn't quite see. Eric packed a camera into his coat pocket, slipped in a portable mic, one GoPro clipped on his chest. If the bus really showed up, he'd ride it. Just a few stops. Get the footage. Tell the story. That was the plan. He waited alone at the corner of Westburn and Elridge, 11:56 p.m. The city was quiet, windy. One streetlight flickered overhead. 11:59 p.m., no cars, no people, just a faint humming sound. Then, right on time, it came. The bus. It groaned around the corner like a dying thing. Rust clung to the sides like barnacles. The windshield was dark, too dark to see inside. And yet, the door creaked open just for him. Eric stepped on. The driver didn't speak, didn't move, didn't breathe. He was a shape, a figure behind the wheel, no face, just smooth, blank skin where eyes and nose should be, like a mannequin left in a fire. Eric sat near the back, the doors closed, and the bus began to move. He thought it would drive through the city, take some old route, show him decaying neighborhoods, maybe circle back to where it started. But after the first few blocks, the scenery changed. There were no buildings, just tunnels. Mile after mile of endless black tunnels that didn't belong anywhere on a map. The lights inside flickered. The floor of the bus groaned like something beneath it was moving. Eric tried to speak to the other passengers, but their eyes were glassy, their faces frozen in faint smiles, like wax figures left too close to a flame. One man wore bell-bottoms. A woman held a handbag with a calendar from 1979 peeking out. A little girl in a pink dress clutched a teddy bear that was missing one eye. None of them had aged, not one wrinkle, not one gray hair, and none of them blinked. Eric's breath quickened. He tried to open the emergency exit. It was sealed shut. He knocked on the driver's window. No answer. Finally, he yelled, "Where is this going?" The bus didn't stop. The tunnel kept going. And then the driver turned around, slowly. No eyes, no mouth. Just skin that seemed to stretch and pulse like something underneath was pushing to get out. Eric stumbled back. The lights exploded above him. The tunnel outside turned to shadows, all writhing like they were alive. And then, everything went black. When Eric's camera footage was found, it was mailed anonymously to a radio station in Boston. No return address. They played parts of it on air. Most of the video was static, but you can see him get on the bus, and you can hear him whisper one sentence before the tape cuts off, "The bus doesn't stop." Now sometimes, if you're on Westburn Street near midnight, you might hear it coming, that low humming engine. You might even see the lights. If you do, don't get on. Because once you're on Route 113, it never stops. The end. Skin deep. Dr. Mara Ellison had soft hands, a gentle voice, and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She ran her dermatology clinic out of a quiet brick building in a sleepy New England town. Not a big city, not some bustling suburb, just a place where people still waved from porches and read the paper with their coffee. Mara had always been obsessed with skin. Smoothness, texture, the fine lines that crept in around the eyes like little ghosts. She hated age, hated watching it inch closer every time she looked in the mirror. At 44, Mara looked 30, at least on the outside. Inside, things were cracking. It started when she was researching cellular regeneration, late nights, old journals, old-world medicine, and something else. An ancient skin-preserving ritual she found in a book that didn't belong in any medical library. The translation was rough, but the message was clear. Youth can be borrowed. But it always costs something. She laughed at first, but then she tried it. Not on herself, on a patient. Karen Wilkes was the first, mid-50s. Wrinkles like crow's feet etched deep into her face. She came in asking for laser resurfacing, left with her skin glowing, skin like a porcelain doll. She didn't ask questions about the new treatment Mara offered. No one did. The results were too good. Lines vanished, spots faded, faces turned smooth and tight and young again. But then Karen stopped showing up for follow-ups. Her number didn't work anymore. Mara told herself Karen had just moved. People do that. People vanish. Except she wasn't the only one. By the end of the month, 5 patients had gone missing, and Mara had never looked younger. Her skin was radiant, her hair shinier, eyes brighter, and still she kept going, because something inside her whispered to keep going, scratching at the base of her skull, whispering from the dark. Then Jolene Hart came back. She was the 3rd patient. She'd come in for mild acne scars, but now she looked like a nightmare. Her face was scabbed over, flaking in chunks. Her eyes were bloodshot, hollow. Her fingernails were broken and red at the tips, like she'd been clawing at something. Maybe herself. She came into the clinic shaking, mumbling. "It's still inside me," Jolene whispered. Her voice was dry, as if it had come from under the ground. Mara backed away. "Jolene, you need help." But Jolene ignored her, reached up to her cheek, and peeled. Skin came off like wet wallpaper. Underneath, something squirmed. Gray, pulsing, with too many tiny blinking eyes. Jolene screamed as it moved. It feeds through us, she moaned. You let it in. You let it wear us. Mara ran, locked herself in her office, tried not to cry. But she couldn't stop shaking. In the mirror, her face still looked perfect, smooth as glass. But as she leaned closer, she noticed a shimmer under her skin, like something just beneath the surface, moving. That night, she woke up in her bed, drenched in sweat. Her mouth tasted like metal, and her cheeks itched. So she went to the bathroom, turned on the light, and screamed. Her reflection didn't blink. It just smiled. They found the clinic burned to the ground 2 days later. No sign of Mara. But police found something strange in the rubble. Scraps of perfectly preserved skin folded like laundry, and a single note written on the wall in ash. It only needs one more layer. The end.